Hello and Assalamu alaikum everyone. So today we are going to start the topic which is AS called text analysis. Now text analysis is considered to be one of the toughest question of A levels English language, but it's very easy, I must say, if you understand the technique of how to deal with text analysis. Okay. So the first thing that we are going to do right now is first of all I'll show you a text. Okay, and we'll start analyzing it and see what are the things that the examiner is always looking for when you are analyzing a text. Okay, so I've taken a text from it's an article and it's an advice column in short. Okay, and this advice column is taken from the Chicago Tribune. So now we know the context as well as the genre of the text. The genre of the text is obviously non-fiction, it's real, it's not made up. Okay, and therefore it's a non-fiction text which actually gives us an advice. Okay, on what, which is the biggest thing in our lives, is we all fear failure. Okay, so this is the basic concept that has been taken, and it's a non-fictional text. Okay, taken from Chicago Tribune. So the first thing that we look at is, we have already done this part. Okay, so we will, the first very obvious thing that appears in the text is basically the heading. Okay. Now the heading of any text that has a heading, it's either explicit or it's either implicit. Okay. What's the difference? Explicit, which is very obvious, and implicit is some meaning is hidden in it. Okay. So now this particular heading seems to be very explicit. Okay, explicit because it says whatever it's going to discuss. Okay, and the reader does not have to anticipate that is to follow, but knows that it's going to be something related to failure in our lives and how it can lead to a success. Okay, all right. Now the first thing that we can easily see is how our biggest failure can lead to one's success. Okay, now we can easily see that it's a very paradoxical statement. We can call it a paradoxical statement. Why? Because failure is what people believe. It's a mindset. The mindset is when you lose, when you fail, it's the end of the story. All right. But here the writer is actually trying to convince. Okay. So the tone becomes very convincing that once you actually encounter failure, it results in your success. And obviously, people know that this particular text is going to be very motivating. Okay, motivating and obviously inspiring. Okay, because obviously we all have been through all this failure, and at this particular stage of life, you might be obviously it could be any stage. You could be a teenager, you could be a young adult, you could be adult, or you could be someone who is a senior citizen. We all face failure at any stage of life. So it's basically the change of this particular change of mindset or stereotype that is prevailing in the society. The writer is now trying to break that stereotype. Okay. So obviously everybody would be interested. So the general audience, the audience will be the general public. Okay. It is meant for almost everyone. Okay. Now let's start with the article. Okay. Now we'll only do the first part so that you may know how articles are analyzed. There's been a lot written on the theme of failure and how integral it is to success. Okay. So now the writer takes a very matter of fact tone that everybody must have read something on failure. Okay, and how it leads to success. But in a world where people value the people's values all too often determined by list of accomplishments and tangible success, failing feels dangerous. Okay, so now you can see that instead of saying failing feels bad, the writer now makes use of a hyperbole. Okay, dangerous is a hyperbole. All right, and the hyperbole is to show that how is it that people will always fear failure, and whenever they make a plan, they never ever leave a space for failure. Okay, all right. Who has time to fail? Now, such a question. This is true that who has time to fail? Whenever you plan, have you ever planned the space or time where you feel that, okay, I'll fail and then I'll succeed? Nobody does that. They would say that I'll try hard, and the next thing is success. Okay. But nobody has ever given some space to failure. Now, this particular question, now, this is a very important question. Who has time to fail? We feel that we are supposed to have graduated from an Ivy League college. Okay. So now, if you could see this particular question, who has time to fail? This is a very important style of writing where the writer has made use of a rhetorical question. I'll explain what rhetorical questions are. Rhetorical questions are questions which do not need any answer. Okay. Now, instead of looking for an answer, it actually inculcates a thought in the reader. All right. It is basically meant to make the reader ponder over the fact that, yeah, it's true. You start thinking in your mind and you start thinking, oh, yeah, and, who has time to fail? Nobody has ever planned a failure. कि पहले fail first it's going to be a failure and then I'm going to pass. Okay, so this is not what people usually do. So this is a rhetorical question and it is directly connecting the reader with the writer, and it is basically making both of them come at the same level. Okay, making it more relatable. Okay, we feel that we are supposed to, now you can constantly see that the writer is using we. Okay, now we is first person, where why is the writer using we instead of using I or they or you? The writer has not made use of you, which is second person, no third person, he or she, but has only used first person, we, us. Okay, now, why? Why is because the writer wants to make a camaraderie. Okay, it wants to create that connection, wants to create that intimacy with the reader in order to make them feel that we are all in this, we are all sailing in the same boat. So now let's deal with this particular idea together. Okay, so it's that. Okay, we feel that we're supposed to. So after the rhetorical question, the writer has already inculcated a thought. Okay, have we ever thought of failure as something that's part of our plan? No. We usually say, what if I fail? So there is this fear prevailing. This has to be changed. Okay, so now let's move on. We. So we have seen that the writer is making use of first person in order to make it more connected. Okay, and also the intimate tone that the writer wants to create. Okay, all right. I hope I'm clear by now. All right, let's move on. Now the writer has actually given this what we call as conditionals. Okay, which is we feel that we are supposed to have graduated from an Ivy League, started our own business, and earn a first million by the time we are about 23-year old. Okay, so now 23 years old is basically a number. This number, why is the writer mentioning a number, is that what if you are going to start your, or maybe success comes at the age of 24? No, the society has actually set those stereotypes, and the moment they see that you are not successful by the age of 23, they will start calling you a failure. Okay, so now here the writer, we can see that the writer is now adopting what do we call as something which is called a sarcastic tone. Okay, why does the writer need to be sarcastic over here? Is basic, for example, whereabout we must have got this business, we must have earned our first million by the time we're about 23. That shows that the writer is mocking over the set standards of the society. Okay, so you can easily see that tone here. Okay, you can easily see that mocking tone coming in. And if you're already over 30 and haven't done any of these things, and then there is, this is, these brackets are called parentheses. Okay, parenthesis is emphasizing or making it adding details. Okay, parenthesis. So the writer makes use or something similar. You can see that the writer is using a very casual, colloquial is once again a word that we use, that it is a very connected and chatty tone. Okay, so the writer is using a very chatty tone and saying that, and we are already over 30 and haven't done any of these things or something similar. We start to get that sneaky feeling that we just might be failing. Okay, now here the writer says that when you start thinking the way the society has told you to think, okay, they have set those standards and you're not following them, that those footsteps, you are a total failure. Now you can see that the writer has made use of this particular introduction in order to make the reader feel what everybody feels. Okay, so it's something that it's a stereotype and everybody is actually a victim of those thoughts, and therefore this could happen to anyone. So the first part is where we see that the writer is making the whole article relatable. The writer has not come to the point but has made it relatable and has created certain situations like 23 years old and you're not successful, you're not in the Ivy League yet. So these are the situations that the writer has added in order to show that these are the expectations of the society with a mocking tone, and we can see that the mocking tone is very much there. Okay, now when we move on to the second part, which is line 9. Okay, in school we learn the F word. Now you can see this F word. If you look at this word, okay, it is basically a pun. Okay, we know that F word is a swear word, and now here the writer uses it as a failure, the F word as a failure. That obviously a pejorated word, and once again F word is also a pejorated word which has a negative connotation. Okay, so this pun has been used to show that how is it that we believe that failure packs such a valor, because it seems to be the end of the story. That letter was our grade, our identity. Now our grade, our identity. Now can you see the dramatic touch given to the language? Okay, so you would say that the grade, our identity. This is called the dramatic touch given to the tone becomes very dramatic. That once you fail, you would say that that was my identity, that was my personality, it was something so connected to me. All right. So it is basically the writer is once again, okay, making fun, adding a humorous tone to it just to tell that how is it that we start thinking the grade as something that defines us, that defines our personality. Okay, some of us never outgrow that notion. Okay, now the word some of us, not all of us. Now can you see the difference? Not all of us, some of us. So here the writer is now dividing. Okay. Now the tone is that only for some of us never grow out of that notion. The notion of that failure is the end of the story. Okay. So now the writer is saying, but there are certain other people. So now we know that the writer is now going to start with the article in such a manner that now the people will start relating to it, and even if they do so, if they are actually victims of those stereotypes, then obviously they will start moving towards the perception that the writer is introducing. The mere fear of failure can stop people from taking risks that might lead to success and triumph in overcoming obstacles. Now the writer has come to what he has to say. He says that there are sort of people who we actually called failures because they cannot outgrow that notion. But now I'm going to talk about people who will never ever take failure as their fate. Okay, so this is what the writer has done. So now the writer becomes has acquired a very preachy tone and more like an advisor, that this is what will happen to certain people, but we're not concerned with that. Okay, so now you can see that the writer has divided the first part. Okay, now if we look at the whole text, okay, you can easily see that the writer has divided the first part as an intro to make it relatable. Second part, if we look at it closely, okay, now we're going to look at the structure. We've already analyzed the first two paragraphs. You can see that the first part is to make them realize, make it relatable, and make them feel that this is how you think. Okay. Then the writer has demarcated the world into, or the people of the world into two types. One who take failure as their fate, and then obviously later the writer is going to convince them that this is what the failure actually is. Okay, so now I hope that you all have understood how text analysis takes place. It's very, very easy. Once you understand, now there are few things that you need to keep in mind. We usually have a picture, okay? So we can zoom in and zoom out. That's exactly how we are going to do in text analysis. That we will look at the nitty gritties first of all, and then look at the bigger picture, or maybe we can go the other way around. We look at the bigger picture, then we start looking at the nitty-gritties. And the basic idea of text analysis is the connection. Okay, it's the connection of the writer with the reader. Okay, writer with the reader. You are the language students who are now going to analyze that connection. Okay, so this is what text analysis. I've just shown you a little bit of how text analysis works. I hope it helps you out in getting the idea of how this question has to be done. Okay, so in the next class we will be completing the text, and I'll show you more ways of how to deal with the text. So that's it. Thank you very much, and now we end the class.